Okay, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, let us start with the business of the committee of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism together with its entities. We will deal with the meeting in three parts. Will be first brief on the first part by the Auditor General and the audit committees, which will be an in-committee meeting, which is closed from the public. And thereafter will be joined by the department with this entity meeting, which will be open to the public. And the third part, we will allow if there are any members of the public who want to engage with the annual report and the report of the Auditor General of the department. For record purposes, can I get an indication of members present?
Good afternoon, Chair. Kayla Murray.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Good afternoon, Chair Matlodi Maseko with Kayla Murray, standing in for Member Derek America.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon to the AG and everyone present. My name is Mbulelo Isaac Silego. Chair, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Honorable Member.
Afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Nomi Nkontlo.
Chair, members and everyone else. Member Kasim.
Thank you very much. Now, honorable members, I will hand over to the AG to take us through the report. Also, after that, we'll allow the audit committee to take us through the reports as well. Thanks very much. Which one are you starting with? With the department? Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister, HOD, with your delegation of the department, as well as the entities that are in the department, let me welcome you to our second session of our meeting for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism with its entities, and also we'll be looking at the Auditor General's report of that department. We've been briefed earlier on by the Auditor General and the Audit Committee of the department and its entities on the audit outcomes of the department and its entities meeting, which was a closed session. This meeting is open to the public. After the members of the committee have asked questions and engaged on the report, we will allow those members of the public who have shown interest to ask questions if they do have questions. I'm going to ask if the minister and the HOD, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make? And thereafter, we'll go to the reports. It's been a whole day for you.
Good afternoon, Chair, and to the members of the Public Accounts Committee. Thank you very much for hosting us today. We look forward to presenting the financial statements and the audit outcomes of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism for Wesgro, the Freeport Saldanha, and the Atlanta Special Economic Zone for the 2022-23 financial year. Given that has been a long day, I'll end it at that. We look forward to taking the members' questions. Thank you. Although I would, sorry, we did traverse this in the earlier session, but for the benefit of members that were not in the session this morning, notable that Wesgro has turned around its audit outcome significantly in a remarkable achievement of moving from a qualified audit to an unqualified audit within the space of 1 year, which is, I think, no mean feat. And also just to highlight Atlanta Special Economic Zone as our youngest SEZ, which is now fully fledged and responsible for its own corporate affairs, and also managed to achieve a clean audit, which is very good going. Across the board, clean audit for the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, as well as for Freeport Saldanha. So any questions in that regard, we'd be delighted to take. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now, honorable members, there's been a request that if we may please start with questions and points of clarities with the entities, and thereafter we can allow them to leave, and then we deal with the department after that. Now, what we do then is that we will do it the usual way we normally do it. We are looking into the audit report of the entities, all of them, at the same time. I'm not going to say we'll deal with this one and this one and this one. When I give you an opportunity to ask question, ask all your question on Wesgro, on the IDZ, as well as on Atlantis. So that will be in that format. Also on the Auditor General report as well. I think we must do the same. And thereafter, when we finish with those, we can allow the entities to leave. They will continue with the department. If I can get an indication of the members, Honorable Maseko has indicated, Honorable Nkondlo, Honorable Kasim. Let's do it in that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon. And also, I would love to just congratulate the department and the entities for their clean audits or their unqualified audit outcomes. Again, it's like more than 11 years. Usually members Seleku loves asking the question that after 11 years, what's next? And I'll advise minister from the onset to say now the 12th one. So it will be easier that way. But it's more of the questions that we ask, it will be more on the performance based, because we knew that on the auditing, when coming to the financials, we are the champions in Western Cape. No offense to anyone, but that is good. Now we need to see the value for the money. It's the conversations that we will have. And that's what we will look at. Now, share the presentation on the entities. I'll start with the Saldanha IDZ. One of the challenges when you started with the Saldanha IDZ was the issue of getting the students for the employment that were championing the maths, because maths was one of the requirements. And it has been a challenge. If we can check the investment, to what an extent is your investment paying dividends when coming to that? Because you partnered with the department, there was an engagement again with the Department of Education to make sure that you develop or you groom the kids that can be able to react to the needs of the skills that is needed for Saldanha IDZ. And maybe if we can get the report of the outcome of that, just a synopsis of what do you have now and the challenges so far, how are you dealing with that? We'll appreciate that. And the second one, it will be for Westgrow. If we can unpack on the one of the issues that was identified by the Auditor General is the interpretation of the incorrect, if I have to read it in verbatim, it's the incorrect understanding of the National Treasury requirements for the PFMA, the section 51(1)(b) and 2. So if you can maybe unpack your interpretation to the resources of the Auditor General, why was it a little bit different? Because the understanding is that it's not the interpretation per se, it's how it regulates what you have to implement. So if you can unpack that, why the interpretation to you was different from what the Auditor General is saying, we'll appreciate that. And also on the Saldanha IDZ, the issue of the triple BEE, because the Auditor General have identified it as one of the internal control deficiencies that is identifying. I think if we can understand why, I mean, we had this engagement about the triple BE the last financial year and that other financial year. So if you can unpack why is it difficult for the entity to stick to the understanding and implement as it is, because we have seen the other departments have improved. There's no anything that Auditor General has identified. It's only for this financial year. I know we still have other departments we have to go through for the annual report. It's only Saldanha IDZ that is the first time that we see that the Auditor General is mentioning it. So what is the loophole? And other than that, for the improvements that is there on the Saldanha IDZ, the maintained sustainability of the clean audits and any other departments, congratulations. And let's look at the sustainability of everything. Chair, that's all my questions for Friday.
Thank you
Before
very
the
much,
bouquet
Honorable
wins.
Maseko.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Ngondo.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon again to colleagues. We were with them in the morning. Okay, Chair, for this round, I just want to ask on Part C of the entities, all three of them. And I would just focus, maybe start with Atlantis IDZ on their social responsibility. And I must say, Chair, having read the three of them, it's quite interesting if one were to look at their reporting and how they are dealing with social responsibility. And I must say to the Atlantis, as small as it is, as a new kid in the block, I see they've reported quite extensively about what they are doing. And I'm hoping that as a newcomer, they would also share with the other colleagues who I'm sure they're quite busy, but maybe they do not have sufficient pages to just share with us what they are doing around social responsibility. It's important for us to know that in the Atlantis IDZ, with what they are currently doing, and I think we're also told, I think they even have a member of the community in their board who was even in the meeting to try and connect the link with the communities. I just want to understand on this solar water geyser project, which they have implemented, I'm assuming, if they can just share more about this project. And I'm raising this to both the CEO and the chair, considering that in that area that you are in, I know government trialed some what you call solar systems that they put on the roofs of the houses, especially the RDP houses there, which are now sitting as not a so good and nice ornament on the roofs of those communities. And if you go into those houses, actually all of those solar geysers are not even working. And I'm not sure whether you have had any conversation to think about what can be done by yourselves in that, particularly given that you are already working under the issues of green economy. But I must say, I think one is just to acknowledge the work that you are doing and just to share the work here. And then on Saldanha IDZ, yes, I see your social responsibility, and I'm assuming the social responsibility work is linked to the developmental work that is done that I think you spoke of earlier on, which is also part of the program, or are you separating it from it? If you can just make me understand in terms of that. And then with Westgro, really, guys, what's happening here? Why would you just have one sentence on social responsibility? It's about graduates. What is this? Young graduates. Is that all? Is really that all that you can do as an entity on social responsibility? And what is your triple BE compliance information? Because we've got no's all of here, and you say you're still remaining at level 8. Very limited information. So if you can just spare more about your triple BE compliance and activities as an entity. I just want to stop there for now, Chair.
Honorable Kassim.
Chairperson, I think I've been covered by Saldanha and Westgro, so I'll go to Atlantis on page 4 of the report, focusing on expenditure, Chair. It is noted that
on page 4 of the Auditor General's report, it's fine. Talk to it because the department don't have it. So just
okay, it's fine, whatever they're able to respond to.
No, they'll be able to respond.
They should.
Yeah.
That's fine, Chair. As I was saying, it is noted that there is an unspent amount of funds by the entity, which was as a result of not complying, Chairperson, with requirements of the conditional grants. I would like to know, with regards to that, what requirements are those and what are the reasons provided for that non-compliance? And then secondly, on page 4 of the report as well, it is noted that I'm sorry, not with regards to Atlantis. I'm now in the Western Cape Department of Economic Development and Tourism. On page 4, page 4 specifically, it is noted that the under expenditure was as a result of underspending in Program 5, which is economic planning. The cause for such an expenditure is said to be related to technical expertise required for the implementation of the MERs. Can I ask what sort of technical expertise is required here and what makes it difficult to acquire the services of personnel able to do that type of work? And then with it attached to that on page 10, which human resources policy were not complied with, which resulted in an irregular expenditure of 4,000 Rand per person. In that financial year period under review. I know 4,000 might not seem like a lot of money in a greater scheme of things, but in a country like ours where poverty is rife, Chairperson, government must account to each and every cent. So can I get an indication as to specifically on that that 4,000 Rand, Chairperson?
That is now on Atlantis, ne?
Yes, the first one's Atlantis.
Then now this question is on
Western Cape Department of Economic Development. Based on the report that's
if you don't mind, we'll keep that because yeah, keep it for now for the department because we want to start with entities. Honorable Sileko.
Chair, thank you very much. My apologies. Chair, there's just this issue I need some clarity on. And one issue is on page 86. No, it's 85. The incorrect application of quorum of BACs. Where's Guru? I'm dealing with where's the issue of the quorum. What measures have you put in place? Because one would expect that these are those are issues that you would know how to a quorum of a BAC could consist of and who should be there and how many members. Because issues of quorum those are issues that don't have to. You should know these things. So when you find that an issue of a quorum has led to a finding, it's worrisome. And the reason I'm asking all these questions is because I don't want the West Growth to regress because everybody is positive now. And my question is to guarantee a sustainable or an audit outcome that is going to be similar than this year, if not better. But if those smaller things that have been identified is not been looked at and there is no proper, measurements in place to avoid it, then we are going to be finding ourselves regressing, and I don't want that. So we just want to West Growth to elaborate. And also on terms of page 86, it's just a question that I would like to, when there is a condonement of 71.8 million, Minister, does it not worry you? Or, because we seem to find the same thing when people condone big amounts and then they say, no, we got value for money, but you don't, what is so outstanding here is that there is no reasons. Of course, one is appreciative of the fact that the word fraud is part of the report, but we still no detail in terms of what has led to the condonement of that party of such a big amount, so that we can have an understanding because we want to be transparent and we don't want to hide anything. And also, what is also interesting is the issue of, I don't know, maybe I'll speak on behalf of the officials, Minister, because there is an issue here that says about fruitless and wasteful expenditure for speeding tickets, speeding fines. It's about 4,400. And we all know it happens with all officials everywhere, where you would miss, unfortunately, on our roads, the signages, you won't find them. And as a result, you would pass there and you'll get a fine, but you're on official business. And those are kind of issues that one would have to, there must be an SOP in place, regardless of whether you're on official business, but if it's on your name, then the ticket must be paid by you regardless of that. It can never be an issue that will be found by the AG that says because tickets or speeding fines were not paid, by officials on official business, it has led to a finding. You know, I would just want to know so that we avoid such things, because these are small things that can be dealt with. So that, you know, I think would want to know, how are you going to deal with such issues going forward? And also the issue of the former CEO, that apparently there were gadgets that he did not return. And subsequently, still, I don't know whether those gadgets were returned by him when he left the employment of Westgrow. Just those kind of questions that I want to know. What is the update there? You know, and also I also understand that there are some instances that rental was paid late. That the rental was paid on the first, and then the rental was paid at late, and then there were interest paid. So those are kind of smaller, you know, those are kind of smaller issues that one would not want to see in an annual report, or that those are issues that an AG should not pick up, because there must be SOPs in place that says, no, this is how we operate and this is how we do things, you know. And I just want us to fix these smaller things, and then if we are not fixing them, what are we going to do to make sure that it does not appear? Because those are issues that can be dealt with, and they should not be here. And it's worrisome when I find them here, because the whole purpose of my question and probing is to make sure that we sustain the audit outcome that you currently receive, and we get a better one coming, you know. And I hope I will be embraced in that sense and get the relevant questions and explanation, making sure what are we putting in place to make sure that we don't allow these things to happen going forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Absolutely. So now, honorable members, we finish asking questions on agencies. Yeah? Okay. Can we get the response from the agency? I'm saying I've requested you to please ask questions on the agencies, which is Westgrow, the IDZ, Atlantis, as well as Saldana. So those were the questions, so that when we finish with that, we can release them, and then we'll remain with the department. So I take it you ask question on C, E, and F. That's what I requested. Okay, let's get the response first.
Thank you very much. On the Westgrow, on page 62. If I can find out on the key performance indicators of the film and media declarations signed, if you align the outcome, because you do have the overachievement, and if you look at your planned target, you have been overachieving one way or another. Why was the target set low while you invest more in promotion activities where you're not anticipating the...
Which page is that?
Page 62 of Westgrow. So
is it, what section is that? It's strategic. No, but what section is it? C or E?
Yes.
Is it B?
Yeah, it's B, Chair. Yeah.
B is the Honorable Maseto.
So, sorry, Chair. Let me ask without that. So the target set, I was making it easier, Chair, so that we finish quick. Okay. So the target set for achievement for the film, it's not even specific, it's from 2 to 5. But there is an investment, the money that you put in advertising to draw in investment within the province. Now, there is an overachievement. So why set the target so low whilst you know that you are investing in promotion and advertisement? Where is it that you didn't invest enough, that you were anticipating lesser attention, or you didn't align your investment, the budgeting of your investment, to the output or the outcome of that investment? Because if you had set the target of that minimum of 225 and you achieved 20 something. It's quite a huge achievement to what you said the target. What's the rationale behind the 225 and not the set target? Because my understanding is not the overnight, and I'm saying overnight, but some of the decision is not there one financial year. It's what you anticipate is coming, that you can run for 2 years, 3, and you know what is it that is coming. That what was it that maybe you are anticipating 2 to 5, but you got 20 something. So what is it that happened that was a miracle for you to have such a lot of outcome from your investment in promoting in the film industry? Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ngondo.
Yeah, so let me finish my ones, Chair, since you're saying it should be one round. I just want to understand from page 77, I think, of the Saldanha IDZ on your procurement by other means. I see you have more single source or sole source procurement that you have done there. Is this single source because this is the only supplier of these services? I see marketing, events, legal services, training. So I'm not sure what would have qualified for this to be a single source. Perhaps you can explain, because would one assume that you had to do deviations for this kind of procurement? I think following on Member Seleko, Chair, thanks for asking I think that question on page E, on part E of WESCRO. Particularly, I think if you look at from page 86 right up to 89, if you consider irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So if I think colleagues can just take us into confidence about this. In page 87, disciplinary steps, the prescribed consequence management process were followed against key SCM officials, which resulted in the dismissal of 2 officials. The former CFO resigned from the agency. What is the relationship? Page 87 of WESCRO. What is the relationship of the resignation of the CFO?
It's B. It's D. It's D.
Huh?
It's 87. 87.
Page?
What page are you? It's E. Okay. That's WESCRO, ne?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair, are you trying to confuse me? I'm afraid to.
Apologies. Apologies.
Please.
Apologies. So I must listen.
I'm like, oh. Chairperson, please, man. So yes, it's part E. It's part E. So I wanted to understand the resignation of the CFO in relation to this disciplinary step, because this is mentioned there. Was his resignation or her resignation had anything to do with the matter on irregular expenditure? And what does it mean for this particular, because you're saying there, disciplinary or criminal steps taken as a result of this irregular expenditure. Perhaps you can give us some light about this particular situation, what exactly is happening. And I won't repeat what Member Seleko has already said, because my take is that without even an SOP, I thought in my life of working as an official anyway, if you are on official business, if you get a ticket, it's your baby. So I don't know, when's Randoni here in WESCRO, guys? Please offer me a job. Can somebody just be at Westcrow and then get a ticket and then you guys pay? Huh? So please offer us a job if that is the case. But I just want to understand indeed what would have happened here. Then the last one, Chair, is this one on page 89. I think it's mentioned there up there, the investigation into the matter conducted in relation to the National Treasury. But I'm sure, I think the CFO would just give us some kind of an understanding of where are these issues, and assuming that with the new leadership in the new financial year, or when those that come back, we would not find these smaller nana in the books. Thanks, Chair.
Can we first start with Atlantis? Can we get any responses from Atlantis?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to confirm we are dealing with, by my records, 3 questions that have been directed to us. The first question is the issue around social responsibility and the solar geyser project. The second question is around the unspent amount with around conditional grants. And then the third question, Member Nkondlo, I think was directed to the SEZ on page 77 of our report, is the single source procurements. Thank you. I'll answer the first question, and Ms. Saib, the CFO, will answer the second 2 questions. Thank you for the question and for the comments around our social investment and inclusion work. It is something that we see as an integral part of expanding the impact of investment into the zone. The solar water geyser project, I think we can all agree that the best solution for everybody is proper running water and proper fully installed services in all households remains the ultimate goal. But in informal settlements where that doesn't exist, this project was an attempt to see if we could find ways to supply hot water to residents. The project was designed on the understanding that previous solar projects had indeed resulted in the installation of water heaters that could not be fixed or repaired or maintained by the local community, and so fell into disuse. This project was set up and designed to work with everyday materials that are available to members of the community. It was members of the community were trained in the installation and in the repair. And so the whole idea was that it would be something that could be sustained and looked after by the community. And it was, to some degree, a test to see if that program could work and could sustain itself. At this stage, I think there's always challenges with these kinds of projects, but I think it has proved that there are ways to use this kind of technology and at least offer some benefits to communities prior to the installation of full services. So it was a good project with good learnings coming out of it from that in that respect. So thank you.
Good afternoon. The question around the unspent conditional grants. So the grants monies that are received goes into the liability, and as we start spending the money, it gets matched. When the conditions are met, then the liability gets reduced and we recognize the revenue and the expenditure or the asset. So if you look at note 15, you'll see that 90 million was unspent. The bulk of that relates to the DTIC funding that we received in the latter part of the year. At the end of the financial year, we had already awarded that contract for the civils for Zone 1. So you'll see under the commitments note that most of that funding has already been committed to be spent in the next financial year. The other question around the single source procurement. So actually, this is a new section that came into the annual reports this year. And unfortunately, we put in everything where we were only supposed to have put in the material amounts above R1 million. And the only one that we should have actually included in here was the building that we purchased. So in terms of the SEZ designation, the 4 sites, basically, we could only purchase a building that's within the designated area. The building came up on the market, and we were able to procure that building with the permission of the minister. The other ones are, like I said, all below R1 million. For example, if there's a specific conference or an exhibition or publication that needs to be done, it's very much tailored towards that sort of activity. So you can't go and open it up to test the market for a particular activity because it's directed to a certain marketing event, for example. So those would be the ones that we would have spent on particular marketing conferences and exhibitions.
Honorable Ngol, Funubuye. Okay. Yes.
Chair, my apologies. I forgot to mention that the chairperson of the West Grove board is joining us virtually, Dr. Shirley Zinn.
No problem. So is the Atlantis finished? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, can we then come to Saldanha?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee. I do believe there's also 3 questions that I've recorded here. So the first question on the impact and outcomes from the mathematics program, and then the BEE, and then the corporate social responsibility on page 63. If I may, Chair, I think questions 1 and questions 3 are linked because we do cite the work that we do with the department in page 63. And I've just a note here that I would like to read. And when we have developed these programs, we have reported the outcomes and the impact of the programs to the Department of Education. And particularly, the mathematics program is something that we're quite proud of. We, as the committee will know, we ran it in the financial year 2020-2021. It was a program that was designed by the University of Witwatersrand and the University of Stellenbosch. And it was targeted to the teachers, the mathematics teachers themselves of grade 8 and grade 9 level in the high schools. And during that financial year, it was a diploma course that was accredited by WITS, and it's entitled Professional Practice Applications in Dynamic Software for Secondary Mathematics Teachers. I do believe that of the cohort, 19 teachers eventually graduated and are actively using the learnings from that program to teach maths, if I can paraphrase that, using the software and the tools that the Department of Education provides to them in class. But I want to say that over this past financial year of the report, the work over 2022-23 there wasn't any formalized program because the funding was not in place for that from the department. What the teachers did was really on their own agency and still being supported by Stellenbosch and WITS, who weren't being paid for this work. They've established a professional learning community. So basically what they call a community of practice. And they invited other mathematics teachers in the area to share the best practices that they've learned from the training, as well as using, the outcomes from that training and the new know-how and the new skills to in their maths lessons. So essentially, the 19 teachers that were part of the original cohort that graduated are now actually sharing their knowledge and acting as facilitators in teacher development in the mathematics community across Saldanha. And it includes all other schools and grades in Circuit 3. So the focus really for the next financial year would be now to deepen that mathematics program and give attention to the grade 10 learners as the next step. I have raised before in the committee that together with the Department of Education, we're taking a very conservative, cautious entry into the schools because you don't want to disrupt schools with new learnings, new ways of teaching, because they have so much on their plate already. So we are monitoring the mathematics outcomes, but the theory of change is long. You know, you need to consistently apply, and with the program not being run during for the year under review, you know, and really the teachers doing things by themselves, it does not support it. It's problematic for continual systemic change to happen. But we are in discussions with the Department of Education. They remain committed. It is a tight fiscal time for everyone. And as I said in the previous session earlier this morning, you know, we also need to really look at the aligning with the other programs that the department is doing, like the Back on Track and so forth. On the question on BEE, our supply chain manager is online, Dale Paulser. I'm going to ask him to please respond to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashiba. Good afternoon, everyone. I believe there was 2 questions related to the BEE certificate. The first question related to the Auditor General's finding that our BEE information was submitted late to the BBBE Commission. We acknowledge that fact. But it must be said that for the current financial year that just finished, we have submitted the information timelessly to the BBBE Commission, and that finding will obviously not be identified again going forward by the Auditor General. So we do believe that that internal control deficiency has been closed within our internal systems. Secondly, the question on the BBBE rating that we received from the rating agency. Now, obviously, the rating does not reflect the work and the money that we spend internally on elements such as skills development, enterprise development, and procurement. The issues that we encountered during the verification process, that the evidence that we submitted was not exactly what is required by the verification agency in terms of the template and the formats that they were utilizing. That being said, we can actually verify with our financial records that we do spend money on skills and enterprise development, but the breakdown of the evidence and based on how they were doing the verification did not match each other. After we completed the verification, we had a long discussion with the verification agency, and we agreed on how we're going to take this matter forward. What type of evidence must be submitted? We've created an internal committee that will be structured at collating evidence consistently throughout the financial year. And going forward with our next rating, we do envisage that we're going to have a much more improved rating. Thank you.
Westcroft.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to maybe take a little bit of a look back. I think it's going to be quite important for us to consider that. We've been on quite a journey, and just hearing all these things again, I think is like, oh my God, that's from a time past. But I've forgotten how it was. But I do want to say that obviously, you know, the organization had been impacted by COVID. You know, there was probably a 3 to 6 month gap between the 2 CEOs. This resulted in attendance issues, performance issues, discipline issues. So I think certainly coming into Westgrow, I also identified that there were 3 areas of weakness. The first was the finance team, the second was governance, and the third was the investment teams. In fact, I had to completely rebuild the investment team. So I took the approach of first things first, and started to rebuild the investment team so that we could actually continue to get the work done.
There was also then, I suppose, a process to get the monitoring and evaluation, a team up and running. And in fact, Jacinta was appointed to do some of that work, and she does a really good job of that. Then along came, the qualified audit opinion, notwithstanding a lot of concern. I expressed a lot of concern to the CFO, but at that time she assured me, no, things were fine. We got the qualification, and I think I was here last October, and I had a lot of explaining to do. I am confident that a lot of work has been put in by a lot of people. It started off with the board taking a very active, playing a very active role. A special, not a special, but the audit subcommittee was very, very active and very, very hands-on. The HOD for DDAT was gracious enough to allow the CFO and her team, and they're sitting over there. They did a fabulous job. They came in to support the team because, in fact, the CFO resigned. We didn't really have a supply chain. I mean, it was just a really, really bad situation. Everybody stepped in to help. We graciously accepted that help. We then obviously appointed the next issue was to strengthen and completely refresh the finance team. Sandisa was appointed, and we identified 4 areas where we needed to strengthen the finance team: supply chain, financial accounting, financial reporting, all of the different areas, brought in qualified chartered accountants so that they could staff up some of those areas. All of that, has been completed. We also worked with, internally there was, so apart from just these little things, there was a cultural change that we had to work with. Things around here had to change. So we just were not happy with, this is how we always did it. We turned everything on its head. We completely refreshed all of the policies, which the board, and the one I remember, see if I must just help me remember now, but it was the asset management policy had to be reviewed, the supply chain management policy had to be reviewed, travel policy had to be reviewed. Every time we lifted a bonnet, there was a khocha, and so we've done a lot of work to clean all of that up. In the supply chain space, we had to, review all of the supply chain delegations. We had to finalize it. The whole organization had to go through supply chain training. We put our system onto the electronic procurement solutions, the EPS system. It's been quite a long, hard process, and I'm quite confident that the processes are now in place and that they are being followed. Where they're not being followed, we are quite diligent about doing the consequence management immediately and dealing with the issue. With respect to the irregular expenditure that you will see in this report, that obviously goes back for at least 2 periods, and there was a lot of restatement that happened in this set of financial reports. And I think that it is, I've just lost my train of thought. Let me just finish. Yeah, so with the irregular expenditure, it went back to a previous period, but we had to apply consequence management. And as a result of the consequence management, we dismissed 2 people. The CFO resigned before we could do a consequence management process. We have subsequently sent her name to be part of the National Treasury list of people that left before they had consequence management. I don't know if it's applied or conducted on them. So I think there's been a lot of work that has happened to get us to a point now where we've got an unqualified audit. There's obviously still a lot of work that needs to be done. But I will ask the CFO maybe just to pick up from there. I thought that I just needed to say that it was a massive culture change that we've had to take the whole organization on.
And while we were taking the organization through that culture change, we communicated on a weekly basis. On a weekly basis, we had the team together to communicate, because I think you know what that does to the staff morale. It was a very delicate situation, but I'm comfortable that we are way past that period in time.
Thank you so much, CEO, for that. So I just want to highlight that the details of the condonation are on page 85 of the annual report. I won't go through those in detail, but I think the questions around the composition and quorum of the BAC contributed significantly to the irregular expenditure. And I can confirm that the last incident was in November 2022. And since then, the board approved a new policy that clarified whatever the interpretive issue was. Even the previous policy, you could properly interpret it, but Treasury recommended that we just make it clear so that there aren't issues. Since then, there hasn't been any regular expenditure incurred. Even on the other areas of quotations, there hasn't been irregular expenditure incurred since for this period, for the months of January, February, and March, which is indicative that since the appearance of this entity here before scope, the actions that were taken up until December, you could see the results from January and onwards, because it took a lot of work was done prior to the appearance, from the time that we got the report from the Auditor General and leading up to that period. So the interpretive issue of BAC is resolved and it will not reoccur. We implemented EPS from 1 April. It deals with the culture of how we procure. It's similar to many entities in the province, including the ones we're appearing with, who are now achieving clean audits because they've implemented that system.
So the CFO, on the issue of the quorum, because it was part of the issue we've asked the Auditor General as to a quorum, the way we understand it is about numbers. You must have so certain numbers. But then based on the explanation you might have received, it was say, no, you must have so and so in the meeting. If you don't have so and so in that meeting, then it's not a quorum. It might be good if you can just expatiate on that, because just shed more light on the quorum.
The policy was specific that the CFO is the chair of the committee. If the CFO is not there, then you don't quorate, because the CFO is given responsibility to safeguard the procurement process. And that responsibility lies with the CFO. If the CFO is not there, is there someone acting? Is there someone to whom the chairmanship responsibility is formally assigned to? And if the answer is no, then it doesn't matter who sits in the room, there's no CFO. That's what the policy provided for, the previous policy. The second issue we fell foul on is the policy was about quorum is a percentage of members. So for operational purposes, many people were appointed to the committee. And then if you have applied a percentage to everyone who's been appointed, then you're going to struggle to achieve quorum. What we've done now with the new policy is that we've made the committee fixed by role, to say these are the people that form part of the committee, and that 3 of them must be present. Therefore, there isn't someone who's going to come and say, when I read that sentence, it means this, when I read it, it means this. So that's how we clarified it. And the CFO is still the chair of that committee, and we make sure that the CFO is present to take responsibility for the supply chain on all BAC meetings.
That problem solved. Yeah. Then I'm sure the other question members might be interested in his tickets. Now,
we're going to go through those.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to go first, and then you go first.
Yeah. So we have a policy in place that governs what happens when a ticket is issued. There's a timing difference between when issued with the ticket and when the staff member actually pays. And other entities, what they do is that they just shift the ticket to the employee's name. We don't do that. We take responsibility for ensuring that the ticket is actually paid and then recover the money from the staff member. And we've got a process in place. So what you might see in the annual report right now reflected as not recovered, I can assure you that it gets recovered within a 3-month period. the rental, many of the issues coming up, including the rental issue, aligned to the audit. If you get qualified and you have 72 million operating expenditure, there are systematic issues to be addressed with, and the CEO dealt with that. So before that period, a lot of things went wrong. One of them is that we would pay, for instance, rent late. If you pay rent late, the supplier is entitled to charge you interest for the late payment. So those are the issues that would be coming up and are being dealt with. And I can assure the committee that they haven't since repeated from the time the turnaround was fully implemented. Yeah, the condonation process, Treasury only approves the condonation when certain conditions are met. One of the key conditions is that there mustn't be any fraud involved there. So you need to exclude it. You don't need to prove it, you need to exclude it. And you must undergo a process to exclude fraud as a consideration. Value for money, you must prove that the state actually benefited to the extent it paid. It's not an assumption. You must have evidence that the goods were actually received. If it was a procurement process relating to computers, you must be in a position to show the computers, and someone must do an analysis that if the process was done properly, we would have paid that amount or a similar amount for that for that laptop. The other key thing for me is that the internal controls to prevent reoccurrence must be in place. And for us, it was, getting this condonation through Treasury was an affirmation that the entity has turned the corner. I think that's what it signifies, and that's what it should signify to this committee and to the public, that we would not have secured this this condonation if Treasury wasn't satisfied that the controls and the things that should be in place were in place at the time that they approved the condonation, and that they won't be dealing with a similar condonation of this magnitude in future years. So for us, we wanted to get it done before we submitted the report, so that we can give you the assurance that someone else has looked into our processes and has affirmed that they have been turned around. In terms of BEE, the implementation of EPS allows us to better track the BEE compliance of the people who spend money on, which influences our score. And we're able, when we implement EPS, you're able to better perform in that regard. However, our score is also influenced by international suppliers when we go on missions that we interact with. We're currently undergoing a verification, and we're hoping the work we've done on BEE compliance would reflect in the evaluation we'll get now, and whatever recommendations we get from this evaluation in terms of what are the practical steps we need to implement from moving from one level to the next. For us, it's about progress. How do we show progress from one year to the next to show that we're moving in the right direction? I'm not sure if CEO have left out anything.
On the matter of the former CEO, we raised, so we have invoiced the former CEO, and that's an ongoing matter that we're obviously working with to recover that money. But the process is in place for us to recover that money. So work has happened in that regard. With respect to social responsibility, Member Nkondlo, we are going to do a much better write-up next time. There is a lot of work that is happening across Westgro. I think perhaps not as deliberate as Atlantis, but we certainly are going to be focusing on that as we go forward. I think from our perspective, it was a little bit of first things first, get the organization moving again and get the audit clean. I'm fairly confident that we'll come back with a better report for you next time. I do apologize that we haven't done sufficient reporting in that regard. The KPIs, I think that is, having looked at the KPIs, I think there is an acknowledgement that we are achieving, more than achieving the targets that have been set. Those targets were set about 5 years ago. For the next financial year, we're certainly looking at increasing those targets. In fact, we've already increased them in the APP, the first draft of the APP that we've submitted to PT. So we are taking that into account for the next cycle. But thank you for the question. Thank you. Have we missed anything?
I just want So one of the considerations on the APP targets, the previous ones, not the revised ones, is that the baselines were affected by COVID. So, and also there was uncertainty in terms of how that recovery would look like and how it would impact the work. So going forward now, we're able to have a better baseline and better targets. Thanks.
No follow-ups. So if there are no follow-up or further questions on the entities, can we release them? We are off the hook. So Minister.
Chair, let's make a deal. If they take more than 3 minutes, we ask them to sit again.
I see. Uyafika naba bantu. So Minister, we are taking the fall for the agencies. Honorable members, it has gone past. It's gone past 4:30. It's 13 minutes. It's 30 minutes before 5 o'clock. So now, honorable members, we've got the Auditor General's report and the Audit Committee's report of the department, and there is also Section C, Section E, and Section F of the department. Any indications of questions, honorable members? Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't have a lot of questions, just to congratulate again, Minister. One question that I've been asking throughout the past 9 years, it is the investment from the department in working together with the Department of Local Government to look at the LEDs of the municipalities. And I know there's financial constraints within the departments, but for the investment in the province, so that we distribute the tourism and the working between those two departments is important. And I'll make an example of my colleagues here, constituency in Diewaterskloof. At the dam there is the cottages that if there is a department that specializes in the tourism and you can tap in there to assist the municipality to generate the revenue so that a minister doesn't have more stress in coming to another department of treasury for municipality to make sure that they sustain themselves. But they don't specialize in that, and surely from the department side, identifying things like that. There are municipalities that have twinned with the overseas states where they market themselves within the outside the boundaries of South Africa. And there is also another help where they can amplify, where you can amplify or maximize for tourism outside Cape Town. So I want to find out if there's ever been investment in that. And then how far are you? Because the last time we interacted was you look into it. Did that happen? And the investment is to what an extent? And if you can give me an example of which municipalities have you invested in that we have seen the dividends. We used to have Langeberg that there was the tourists coming for the weddings. And I remember there was a flight that came from China with the whole invitees of the wedding, and they went straight there to have that. So to what an extent are we looking into that, looking at the fiscal challenges that we are facing? Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Maseko. Honorable Ngondo.
Chair, in page 1, I think it starts in 180 to page 183. Chair, if the department can explain to me an irregular expenditure not condoned and removed according to CWC assessment, what does that mean? Why was this particular irregular expenditure if it was declared not regular? Perhaps I'm trying to find my head around this. Please explain to me what happened in this particular transaction. The second one is the one on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure that went into the forensic services and actually emanated from the Department of the Premier's People Management Practices. I'm trying to understand what is written here, because on one hand, in page 183, it says, with consideration that control improvements in the PME Directorate had been implemented and that the recovery of funds was not imminent, the department wrote off the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So when you say it was not imminent, what would have happened? I see that, I'm not sure whether it's the same official. In page 184, you say criminal case of theft was open to apprehend the fraudster. Is that the same case? Has the case been concluded? What exactly is happening here? Between yourselves as the department and the Department of the Premier, you may have had this particular challenge. And then going back to page 125, Chair, in section C of governance. Firstly, I think it's commendable that you don't have, even from the previous financial year to date, you don't have any fraud and corruption cases. I'm sure outside of this one that I was referring to, of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. But one wants to understand, I see these risks, HOD and Minister, in page 125. They are quite, what can I say, what's the right word? They are quite heavy. The ones that you have mentioned there, declining investment due to Western Cape not being the investment destination of choice for local, inability to stimulate economic growth. Maybe just take me into confidence around these risks. And do you have, as you indicate, the under management, I think that's last small paragraph, do you have a cluster-wide risk management system in the province? Because as it were, and when one looks at this, obviously those kind of risks that you would have mentioned would not necessarily be within your own control as a department. Also the G4J, was my understanding of the G4J approach is more also as a department trying to coordinate and guide streamline some of the economic activities, that not all of them may be happening directly through you as a department, but through other departments. So I'm asking, do you have a cluster-wide type of a risk mitigating approach where, for example, if you talk about what you would have made as your assumptions in terms of jobs from the infrastructure department, and that department, if everything else that you would have thought would happen doesn't happen because of some of the issues there, how do you mitigate? So I'm trying to understand that because indeed part of the problem of being a coordinating department is always sitting with the fact that you are managing activities of others. You are trying to channel others whom sometimes may be cooperative, sometimes may not, given their own environment. So it's just one issue around the risks that I would like to understand. How are you dealing with? And actually, as I was listening to these entities that you are dealing with, that the type of complexity that is there already even itself makes me to wonder the kind of risk mitigation sophistication that you have, if you think from what the SEZ about tax compliance and what is happening at a national level to what the kind of capital projects or pipeline of the Freeport IDZ. So if you can just take me into your own discussions in the department, or how you are having the necessary capacity to deal with all of this that could actually, have nice plans, but those plans, if not well and properly coordinated and managed, could actually go haywire. Thanks.
Honorable Nkondlo, Honorable Kasim.
Sorry, I just wanted to check if my two questions were noted down earlier, the two that you asked me to hold. Or do I need to repeat it again?
Please.
Okay.
Please.
The first one was based on the under expenditure as a result of underspending in Program 5. The cause of such an under expenditure is said to be related to technical expertise. So if you can just give clarity on that, what sort of technical expertise is required there, and what makes it difficult to acquire the services of personnel able to do the work? And the second one was based on the 4,000 Rand. On page 10, where human resources policies were not complied to with, or which resulted in an irregular expenditure of 4,000 Rand in the financial year. Can you just give clarity on that as well, please?
Thank you. On page 4 of the Auditor General's report, they say there is an underspending against the budgeted expenditures, mainly due to underspending of Program 5 economic planning as a result of the need for technical expertise. I think it's the same question that it's on. It relates to municipal energy resilience. So if maybe you can just expatiate on that. Honorable Seleku.
Chair, in closing, Minister, I had to say something here. No, because why I'm saying that, Minister, is that we have been really dealing with SCM since the first inception. We started with, it's my first time doing annual reports. And listening to you this morning in terms of your role, in terms of oversight as PT, you can give people as much training as you want. And I'm talking about your local sphere, your provincial departments, but I always say you cannot train people in terms of integrity. You cannot train people in terms of doing what is right. And I was sitting here and saying that I would really want to hear from you as a minister in terms of what is it that you as a department can do beyond what you're currently doing in terms of making sure that people comply and people do what is right at the right time and do what is expected from them. Because what Member Masego was saying, that I ask what next, because I want us to go to a level that when a department is consistent for more than a decade in terms of compliance, performance, and audit outcomes, one would want to see that, you know, spilling over to other departments that you are currently engaging on a daily basis, but we seem not to get it, you know. And then you ask that question, what next? Because you've been consistent in terms of audit outcomes, but the ones that you're actually engaging on, you know, they're similarly struggling. Are we really going to come to a level where, you know, every sphere will understand the seriousness of compliance and the seriousness of consequent management? Because that is something that is lacking, you know. And whereas one would appreciate, you know, when an entity like Westgro would say, we were so serious about consequent management, we went to the level of dealing with everyone regardless of the level of position you have in an institution, because we are clear about clean governance, because it leads to people. So those are the kind of things that one would have to look at and say, really, what next can one do, you know, as a department? Because surely it cannot be only on your responsibility to make sure that, you know, people, you know, do what is expected. If they don't do it, then you say, yeah, you are there, but you don't fulfill your role in terms of oversight, but you are doing as much as you can in terms of capacitating these sections, giving the relevant information, giving the relevant training. But on conscience, unfortunately, people just go rogue and they do as they like. And you can't do anything because they don't account to you. Thank you very much.
Good closing remarks, Honorable Selenko. Minister.
Thanks very much, Chair. Maybe I'll start with the closing remarks. Thank you. That's a very valuable inputs, and you're absolutely right, Honourable Sileko. And I think that's why the values and the culture within an organization are so important. And so within our organization, one of our core values is competence. So that's the capacity to be able to do the job that you're appointed to do. Then importantly, it's about integrity. And that's to be honest and to do the right thing. And, you know, we're human beings, so sometimes we make mistakes. And if we make mistakes, our next value then is about accountability. And that's being able to take responsibility for those actions. And so through our recruitment and through our culture journey that the whole government has undertaken, those are the kind of values we hope to instill in every single employee, so that we can maintain the system and that everybody is doing the right thing. And when we do make a mistake, we take responsibility for those mistakes. And I think that's a very important part of the bigger picture and the bigger story. So it's not only up to Treasury, you're quite right. It's every single employee has that responsibility to live those values in whatever role they play within the government. And you can see now that the Western Cape government is now in the running to be an employer of choice, competing with the private sector. And I think it's because there has been such a strong focus on the values and the culture within the organization. So on that note, HAD, could I hand over to you the questions on the LEDs and the MER and specific pages within the governance and PFMA compliance?
Start off with the question that relates to the technical expertise and the under expenditure and what type of expertise are we referring to. Maybe I should make it very clear to the members that when we talk about energy and energy resilience, we're talking about a completely new and emerging industry where there has not been capacity both in the public sector and also in the private sector. That the technical expertise are actually still emerging. And the level of work that was done by the department was highly complex work. And this work relates to standardizing systems and some standardizing agreements, something that we have not done before. It talks about wheeling and revenue impact within municipalities. These are very complex modeling tools that are required, and it's not easy to come by with those expertise immediately. Are those expertise being developed and emerging? Yes, they are maturing, but as the industry matures, so will those expertise become quite available. When you go out on tender and look for panels of expertise, the responses you get tend to be quite inadequate to deal with the challenges that you have defined. But I think as the industry grows and develops, those skills will be readily available and the expertise will then become available. Where we've been quite lucky, I think, as a department, not as a department, but as the Western Cape government, we've been able to recruit in to the Western Cape government technical expertise in the area of energy, which helps with definition, which help with scoping, which helps with direction in terms of strategy for finding the right resources. So I think we're in a much better place today than we were last time. And I think, as it were, we'll be able to get better responses from the market and a quick response from the market. Remember also the municipalities are also struggling with defining what their requirements are. I think they were relying on the department, which is also not very clued up or well clued up in this area. But I think now we're in a much better place to know how to define what it is that we require. That's what explaining the sort of technical expertise on the advisory, on the tariffing, on the contracting, but also on understanding the infrastructure requirements for energy. Maybe on the question.
Thanks, thanks, Judy. Thanks, Member Maseko. I'm talking specifically about some of the work that we've done in the regions with respect to tourism, I think, which is what you asked. So last year, we developed something quite new, which was the Tourism Product Development Fund. And we actually focused our entire budget, which was 7.6 million, on regions other than the metro. And we actually, it's amazing. These are projects where we have a matching contribution from local businesses in the regions. We put out a call and we managed to literally get projects in total. I'm just looking at the stats, 15 projects. We touched every single one of the district municipalities. So it's things like investment. I'm just going to pick out one or two. We had a in the Karoo, we started the Nova Balloon Safaris. These people were able to invest in an additional product and grow their business, and we can count the number of additional jobs. The Ikwatu Sand Cultural Center, which used to do, you know, their menus had things like burgers and Coke and chips, and we managed to do a product development fund where every single one of the things on their menu are now sourced sustainably on the farm. And it's meant that the jobs in that whole West Coast region, they're now, you can't buy a Coke, you can only buy like Darling juice, and you can buy local stuff all within like 50 Ks of there. And all the products on the farm, in the menu, are now harvested from their Ikwatu Center. And I could go on that, but I just asked my team, and the direct jobs created from that was 300. But you know how the tourism industry works. It's really it's the multiplier effect of the jobs. That's only the ones we can count who were actually employed. If a farm started a e-bike system because we bought the bikes, we know how many direct jobs. What you can't count is the number of people who, the way they choose destinations is they say, wow, that's an amazing product. I'm going to book my flight to the Western Cape. And they spend money on the value chain of tourism, and that's where jobs are created. So that's just and in addition to that, we did just, when we do our tourist guide training, we go all over the province. So these are really small businesses, people who are unemployed, who want to start a tourism business. So for example, this year we trained up the West Coast, specifically people on the Cradle of Human Culture sites, so that local people can be guides in those areas. That's just giving you a few anecdotes from that. Thank you.
If I could ask Joe to speak to the G4J risk and how they are coordinated and managed within the G4J framework. That speaks to the question that Ms. Gondlo asked.
Thanks. So there are a number of projects which we have proactively identified, whether they are transversal or delivered by a specific project. And one of the ways to do the risk mitigation is to make sure you do co-planning. And then what we have as oversight is an HOD steering committee, which essentially has all the heads of department that is related through to that's within the G4J. They have oversight of all of these projects. Their reporting system is also transversal, and everybody has oversight over the progress that is made in those particular projects. So the information is transversally shared, and the oversight, without overstepping the responsibilities of the specific accounting officers, but the reporting on the projects and the progress of the projects, everybody has line of sight, and everybody has an opportunity from each of the departments to actually comment on it. This is, of course, further embedded by having project teams, but then also priority focus areas, leads, HOD leads that make sure that there is coordination and the support to deliver this project. Because on the one hand, you have oversight, but you also need to make sure that these projects actually are progressing and supported to make progress. So that's currently where we are at now. Thanks.
Thank you. And there was a question that talks to the 4,000 Rand matter. I must say to the committee that that matter is still under investigation. And once the investigation has been concluded, we'll be able to report on that matter. There's an issue of lack of clarity as to whether there's a policy or non-policy, and also the issue of accountability. So once we come to a conclusion on that, we'll be able to report to
4,000 Rand.
Sorry again?
4,000 Rand.
4,000 Rand.
What was the problem there?
So this is an instance where a employee has been transferred to a completely different environment, and then they have been spending money the money traveling between the two sites, whereas there was no clarity as to what the policy says on that. So that's really what we need to resolve. Yeah. Yeah.
Any further follow-ups from members? Any points that have not been covered?
There's just one more question that the CFO needs to respond to.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. With regard to the irregular expenditure not condoned and removed, I think Sandisa explained the CWC, the Condemnation Working Committee of PT. So all irregular expenditure must be condoned by the PT Condonement Committee. And what happened at that committee is that they felt that the expenditure was actually not irregular. So they asked the accounting officer then to remove it. So AG picked up the expenditure as being irregular. PT then looked at the information and they felt that it was not irregular. It's a procurement matter, and mainly because this province has got an electric EPS system. And based on the EPS system, we invite all the possible bidders. AG felt that we should have gotten at least 3 bidders, and because we didn't have 3 bidders, they felt that it was irregular. But based on the fact that the Condemnation Committee didn't find the matter to be irregular, it was then removed, and accounting officer then technically condoned it internally within the department. So that's what the 29,000 relates to. The salary, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, this one came up a lot last year. It's a bit of a so the matter relates to the fraudulent activity that actually occurred within the Department of the Premier. So within this province, the salary administration is done central. It's done by the Department of the Premier on a centralized basis. So the fraud that occurred within the Department of the Premier. But because the budget is within DDAT, we need to carry that expenditure. And in what the Department of the Premier has done is, through the consequence management process, the staff member that through an omission allowed the fraudster to actually get the salary into his bank account was put through a whole disciplinary process. But because the department carries the budget in terms of that salary. We now need to carry the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The case was made with SAPS, so it's still open in terms of SAPS, but it's 69,000. So we don't expect that they are going to do a lot of work around the 69,000. But from the department's perspective, we must write off the fruitless and wasteful expenditure because it's nobody that we can recover it from. And that's what's coming through in terms of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure in that section. I think that was the only two questions that came through. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Maseko, Honorable Nkonzo.
Thank you very much. Just to get the clarity on the issue of the where you mentioned that there was a policy that within the centralized system, and the Auditor General said you should have had the three quotations. The centralized system, when you implemented it, you have a policy attached to that, but still the Auditor General said that it could have been the three quotations. That's what I've heard you saying. Am I correct in interpreting it that way?
So Provincial Treasury felt that the EPS system allows for as many bidders as possible to apply, because the EPS system works on the principle that it's open to all bidders to actually apply and be registered. So this, because it's a very small procurement amount, you put it through the EPS system. The AG felt that we should have at least gotten 3 quotes. So when we put it through the EPS system, only, I think, 2 bidders came back. And they felt that at least we should have at least gotten quotes from 3 bidders. But the Provincial Treasury felt that because it went through an EPS system, went through an open process, and you allowed all potential bidders to apply that's on EPS, you've actually met the requirements in terms of what was needed for that process.
So we're back to the interpretation.
We're back there, Chair. Who is the final arbiter? On auditing matters, who is the final arbiter? Is it possible that you can have a provincial treasury in a way reversing a decision of the Auditor General? I don't understand that. 2, what process? Because if, as the matter now was under, because it was already declared an irregular expenditure and going its own process. So when you now decide that you are condoning it, where is the Auditor General in that process? Does Treasury write? Because this is a question we're asking even yesterday. What is this internal, what do you call it, intergovernmental dispute? Colleagues, what's going on? Who is who here? Who sets the rules? Because if the Auditor General is this, what do you call that term? Supreme what?
Supreme Audit Institute. They call them SAI.
Yes.
SAI Institute.
So why is it sharing this responsibility somewhat with the provincial treasurer? Or maybe we are misunderstanding what is, and I'm using this particular transaction because when it was reversed, it meant that decision of the AG is no longer holding.
Now, okay. Yes.
Just to get also to add in clarity. So if the Treasury condones it, does the Auditor General audit that decision of condonement, or it ends up within the departments only? And we are talking about a specific scenario that can help us to have an understanding for the future. Thank you.
Yeah. So maybe 2 things. One is that when the irregular expenditure was raised by the AG, we accepted it as a department. So we've disclosed it as irregular expenditure. So I think that's the first thing. The condemnation process is one that is within the PT ambit. So the condemnation, of the irregular expenditures within the PT ambit. So maybe also to give you some comfort is that the AG will now audit the condemnation process. And if there is, so there is a almost say the loop gets closed. So if there is any concerns around that, so there's two things that the PT looks at in terms of condemnation. The most important thing would be whether the service was rendered, whether value for money was attained. And so that would be the critical thing. So with any irregular expenditure, if there was no value for money or the service was not attained, they would not even be condoning it or asking the accounting officer, in this case, the accounting officer, to remove it as irregular expenditure. But I think the more important thing is that from an AG perspective, as an AG will look at this process, and if they're not comfortable, they will then raise it as an issue. But I think I just want to again just clarify that we did accept the irregular, it is closed as irregular. The condemnation process, which is a PT process, is a separate process that is coming through.
Mr. you want to comment?
CFO.
Jofe, you want to comment?
I'm fine, thank you. What the CFO said is correct.
Yeah.
Actually, AG was supposed to comment. The CFO, you are saying the process went for condonement, and I understand that because condonement is part of the consequence management, which is in the PFMA once the irregular expenditure has been declared. So once it goes into that process, the intent is to ensure consequence management. But you are saying that consequence management didn't take place because the basis of the consequence management is what was reversed. Isn't it? Because what PT is saying, according to your report, what PT is saying is that the basis of what this particular transaction is declared irregular. We disagree, isn't it? Unless you want me to speak in Xhosa because I'm English in my second language. Minister, you must help, and chairperson here. I'm really trying to understand this because what I'm trying to argue here is that my understanding of what you are saying is that PT has actually changed the basis because the PT is saying they do not agree that actually this is irregular expenditure. So indeed, it makes sense that they say there's no need to condone.
But the Auditor General, but the Auditor General is
the Auditor General had said that was an irregular expenditure. So who gets to determine? This is the question that I'm asking. Who gets to make the call?
Yeah. Okay. I think before it maybe the topic gets a little bit out of hand. Of course, it's quite a very debatable issue, but the case here at hand now, where it is now, it's still going to go to the AG, and the AG is going to decide after this condonment was done, whether was it proper or not, in spite of the provincial treasury has disagreed. But then now, having them disagreed, it went to the condonment committee. Then the condonment committee, the decision of the condonment committee is still going to be audited by the AG. Yes.
So, because it's not a disagreement, it's a process. So irregular expenditure is identified by the Auditor General. Okay, once that happens, then in certain cases, it can be condoned if it meets certain criteria. Okay, so for example, if there's any fraud involved, it cannot be condoned. All right, so that's about the treatment of the irregular expenditure once it has been identified. So in this particular case, there was no fraud, and so it could then go to be reviewed for condonement, which is the next step. In this case, it was condoned, and then that later on gets audited again by the Auditor General. It's not that it's a disagreement, it's the process for how you treat irregular expenditure. And in respect of consequence management, CFO, maybe you just want to add on the consequence management portion of it?
Yeah, so I think maybe the other part of it is that PT, it doesn't go to the condonement committee until the process has been completed. So we must take consequence management. So within the department, we will look at a few things. We will look at the value for money. We would need to evidence that service delivery has happened. And then we also have to take consequence management. And PT will only look at it once we've actually done all three of those things. So it's not taking away the irregular expenditure from a department's perspective, because we recognize the irregular expenditure when AG raises it. So this is a process in terms of the condonement part of it. And I think the important thing is that if we, and I agree with the consequence management part is very important, because if you have irregular expenditure, you don't want to repeat it. So it's a small amount, but still, you don't want to repeat it. So for us, it's important. And I think what the Treasury's process as well is that the department needs to ensure that every single step is done before it actually goes to the condonement committee, which includes consequence management, value for money assessment, and whether there's any evidencing that there's no fraud, etc., was in that process.
Ms. Chofe?
I've got nothing to weigh in. I think the department's answered it adequately. So yeah, we would have, whatever the process was for the condonement, we would have looked at that process and were all the stages of that process followed and adequately approved, and yeah, and then we would have raised findings if there was anything to be raised.
Now, this is a matter we are always battling with as the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, because with us, our partner in public accountability is the AG, and we believe that the buck stop with the AG, because the AG is the Supreme Audit Institute of the country. They call them the SAI Institute. So whatever, the person who's got the final say on audit matters is the Auditor General. But obviously you are dealing with human beings who've got their views. That's where one of the answer we must still find, maybe even with the assistance of the department and the minister. See, Minister, sometimes among themselves, bureaucrats disagree. Now, especially about the audit outcome. Then one of the problems sometimes the AG is faced with, if maybe even the audit committees, they say, no. If you don't take what we are saying as the department, will take you to court. And these days, no one wants to be taken to court. And in a way, we believe it's another way where some department, they are just strong arming the Auditor General into submission, So now, because auditing and accounting, it's a function of the AG. Then the legal matters is a court of law.
You can accuse us of strong arming the Auditor General, and on what basis are you saying that?
I'm not saying on this issue, but
Because I don't want that in the record in respect of this department.
Now, this is general. It's a matter that we are raising with most of the department, that we are always concerned that when there are disagreement in departments, most departments will say, no, look, okay, if we don't agree, let's go to court. We don't think that's the right way of resolving the matter of auditing and accounting.
But that's not an issue at play here with this department.
Yes, I agree. That was by way of an example.
But the thing is, there isn't a disagreement on the condonement on this particular issue. There's no disagreement between Auditor General and the department. So I don't
we
know
are clear on that,
comments.
but I was making an example.
Yeah.
So
but just to be clear, there is no disagreement between the Auditor General and the department on this matter.
There was, but there is not now.
In the chair.
There was, but there is
our
now.
platform.
There was, but the matter now has been resolved. Like the AG said, they are going to wait for it once it goes to them. So, but anyway, that was just by way of an example that at least I think we had an opportunity to discuss at length on the matter. As I know it's a difficult issue because every department is striving for a unqualified and a clean audit. No one wants to be to settle with a lesser than that. Like one member of the audit committee says that, look, next time they will want to see also green. You know, everyone wants to be green, want to go for greener pastures. So we always will want that. We will want every department to actually achieve that. But obviously, we are not gonna not ask question where we feel that question needs to be asked. And of course, we understand at some point we must agree to disagree. But on that note, honorable members, any further questions, point of clarity or comment? Yes.
Because I do not want for us to derail the discussion, I wanted to register something, and I think we will await the process. Unfortunately, we don't know when it's going to come back. Perhaps it's going to be a matter of resolutions. That I think we've got a right in the committee to express ourselves, and if there's clarity that must be given by the department and the minister, their responsibilities to do that, not to catch feelings. So I think we need, so that we don't create a spirit of not being able to engage in the committee. Secondly, Chair, in page 257, and I want to just put this on record because I'm not sure whether the department can answer or will send responses. I'm actually trying to understand, and I see that there are about 3 beneficiaries. Page 252, is it 257? 237, sorry. So I don't have my glasses, so I don't see properly. Page 237. There are 3 beneficiaries. One is a Pick and Pay Township Revitalization Program, which has been summoned by the department through the state attorney. And there's a plea due in June, which was supposed to be June this year, 2023, according to what is written here. Not sure what is the amount because the department says it transferred funds and the funds were withdrawn. The other one is 2 beneficiaries that the department here says they transferred funds and the beneficiaries failed to provide supporting evidence. I'm interested to know what happened here and what would have taken a department, assuming these are small entrepreneurs, that the department will take them and would even issue summons unto them. And if you read what the first one, which is the Funding Fair project, that the department is even in a payment agreement with the service provider subsequent to this, and that agreement is being honored. And there are 2, and I would be interested, who are these? Because the market store in Delft, because we have been having this conversation about these township stores. The market store in Delft actually was closed. And I would recall that the 2 ladies that were responsible for this particular market store in Delft actually were even sitting with additional cost from the Pick and Pay from that particular project. So if we can get information about this, including these, that what would also be monies that would have been transferred by the department to 2 beneficiaries to purchase machinery. What was that? I see it happened in 2018, 2019, that is why it is here. So if you can get information, Chair, I would appreciate to understand. And also in the plea, and that whether it was a plea bargain or what, the plea in the June 2023, whether the matter has been concluded and what's the conclusion of the matter. Yes.
Can we get any responses on that?
We'll ask the CFO and John to get the answers.
Yeah.
CFO.
Thank you, member. I think what maybe starting off with generally all of them, right? So I think for any funding that we transfer or pay through supply chain management, we need to ensure that there's service delivery. So it's critical that if a department doesn't receive service delivery, it's value for money issues, but also it could be fraud, etc. So with regard to the Funding Fair project, it was a supply chain management process. And as part of the supply chain management process, the service provider in that instance was going to was responsible to actually project manage an event for us. COVID then hit in that period, and the event was postponed due to COVID. And a few months later, when we asked the service provider to repay the money, because we had to pay an upfront amount in order for him to secure the venue, etc., He then explained that he has used the funds and he wasn't able to repay us the funding that we provided to him. We went into a legal process with him, and at that point, the advice again, because no service delivery, and obviously the department needs to be able to evidence that either the event has happened, and part of the options was to ask the service provider to still deliver on it, even if it was at a smaller scale, but to be able to still deliver on it, and he wasn't able to. So what we then agreed through a legal service process is that the service provider would then repay the department. The alternative was for us to blacklist the service provider, which we didn't want to do, because obviously non-delivery of services means that you need to blacklist, and the service provider wouldn't have been able to actually get any kind of procurement opportunities. So the agreement at that point was then for the service provider to pay us back, which we then entered through a whole legal process. And at this point, he's actually paying us, and I think we've entered into a repayment period of 36 months. So he's paying us back as per the agreement. So that relates to the funding for project. Very similar to the township revitalization, the two bottom ones, the 77,000 and 46,000, is that the one project specifically, the department also transferred money to township businesses. And part of the conditions was that they were supposed to procure certain assets for the business. They did not honor the agreement. And same principle, the one business was willing to pay the department back, and they're busy paying the department back. We are re-looking at that one specifically, because what we're finding is that the interest being charged is not worthwhile for us to actually cover that money. So we are approaching the state attorney to actually write off that debt as part of the township revitalization project. I think the Pick n Pay one is a bit different. It's not not the Delft store. It's something that happened before the Delft store. So, John, are you going to respond to that one?
Yeah, thank you. That specific one was where we, as part of the Pick n Pay revitalization program, almost the original group of cohort, or the cohort of entrepreneurs that we assisted. This particular person was actually of Delft. He required some funding for refurbishment of the infrastructure. We provided that funding for the refurbishment. I think he used a part of it, and then decided to abandon the concept for the store. We then requested the balance of the money to be repaid, which he then disputed, and then we entered into some sort of legal sort of checking up on how we can actually get that money back. So that's that specific example. It's not the one that you're talking about of the two ladies.
So both of these, the Pick n Pay Township Revitalization and the other two Township Revitalization projects, these are entrepreneurs that you, as the department, you gave them money, and now whatever that you gave them money for, that could not be done, and now you are suing them.
Just on the second one, the second one was the project, two projects in Oudtshoorn. Okay, where it was entrepreneurs we assisted, and what we did was we forwarded them money to purchase equipment. There was 3 others that we supported, and they sort of honored that agreement where they purchased the equipment and they went ahead. The 2 specific ones, we waited and they just never purchased the equipment. So part of the agreement is that we provide you with the funding and you purchase the equipment. I think it was 2 machines. It was both it was sewing businesses, and they just reneged on it in terms of purchasing the machines.
Chair, yes, it's a Friday. I want us to go home. I would request maybe as part of the resolutions, one, I think I will take the matters into the discussion in the resolutions so that we do not do a back and forth on the matter.
Any further questions, points of clarity, comments? If there is not, if there are no further questions on my left-hand side, That means we are coming to the end of the meeting. I think Honorable Maseko.
Thank you. Since your indulgence of the further comments, not the questions, I think what is important for moving forward is for the engagement with and I know the willingly the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, like member mentioned, the resolution is to engage also with the Department of the Treasury to look at the condonement and when coming to some of the issues, because throughout the department as we engage, you can see that there is different circumstances. It all depends on the scenario of what's happening before the decision come to Treasury to say they condone or they don't condone. So for us to get the clarity and also to be more informed about under what circumstances between the Treasury departments and the AG, we need to have that engagement also. So I know the department will be willingly to come and also share that knowledge with us for moving forward for the future. So I'll just thank them in advance for that share.
Okay, so thank you very much, Honorable Maseko. That will assist in enriching our knowledge and understanding on the process as well as to, so maybe it will avoid us asking more and further questions on the issue of the condemnment and who's actually supposed to have the final say on the issues and matters of auditing. With that being said, obviously we'll definitely look that into resolutions. Let me make use of the opportunity to thank you, Minister, and the HOD, the department, the AG, Audit Committee, what I call our reliable partners on the accountability ecosystem, and also the department for always being available whenever we call, we make this call. And obviously it's not gonna be always easy questions, and definitely it's not meant to catch you up, Minister or HOD. It's definitely not meant to trick you in any way. But I think at the end of the day, we just want to have a good working relationship, whilst we might also accept that in the process we are not always going to agree, but we might end up finding an amicable understanding and amicable resolution. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting is closed. Thank you, Chair.